You are traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of plot and themes, but of structure. A journey into a wondrous storytelling formula whose boundaries are that only of a multiple self-contained narratives. Next stop, the anthology format. Derived from the ancient Greek word anthologia to mean a collection of poems, anthology is the word to describe a collection of selected works of art. These could either be literature, music, or films and TV episodes. Anthologies had always been around, but they really took off in the era of the old-time radio program, by presenting a different story with a different cast of characters, with the only constant being a host who introduced and concluded the programs. It was an effective way to tell a series of stories each week, whether they be dramas, mysteries, or horrors. This format translated well into television. Some of the most popular early TV programs were anthologies, not only because they were a good way to burn off unsold TV pilots, but also as a way to keep people coming back every week to hear a new, different story each time. One of the genres that benefited greatly from this was horror. Horror is one of those genres that works best in self-contained narratives. There is a reason why you don't see many massive epics in the genre, well, unless you're Stephen King. But since horror in its most basic form is a ghost story that leads up to one of several big scares, it's a structure that lends itself well to serialized programming. Each week a different monster, each week a different chilling tale to tell. Even today, in the era of prestige TV, there are shows that understand telling a different story each week or each season guarantees maximal terror. The truth persists in the world of manga. A lot of the best horror manga usually involve episodic storytelling from chapter to chapter. Even when it has a reoccurring cast with an overarching plot, their story is usually formed by a series of smaller ghost stories that build it into a larger narrative. Today's subject is an example of that storytelling structure, and in the world of anime and manga, it's one of the best.
いらっしゃいませ。当店では犬猫の小動物から鳥昆虫爬虫類まで何なりと取り揃えておりますが、お客様はどういった？
京都ビデオ。
For a change of pace, I'm gonna let our star of the evening start us off.
ようこそカウント D のペットショップへ。ここはチャイナタウン。人々の常識や想像を超えた世界の珍品名品の集まる都。今宵きっとお客様のお望みのペットが見つかります。
Count D, mysterious androgynous twink and small business owner, runs a mysterious pet shop in Chinatown, San Francisco. Polite, yet with a sinister undercurrent, his business mostly deals with regular animals. But for those who have far more pressing needs, D has a menagerie of more exotic creatures. These animals and creatures often appear to look human to these clients who seek to fill a void in their lives, whether it be a couple trying to get over the loss of their child, or a lonely movie star trying to cope with a bitter divorce. D is more than happy to give his clientele what they want, provided that they sign a contract with stipulations that they will take care of their new pets.
一つ、他人に彼女の姿を見せない。一つ、オプションのお香を毎日絶やさずに。一つ、餌は水と新鮮な野菜だけを与えること。特に3番目。
But you know the new owners, sometimes they can't help themselves, and it often results in a sticky end. Running parallel to all this is Leon Orcott, SFPD rookie detective and long-lost member of Information Society. Out of all the people down at the station, he's the only one who's noticed a correlation between a string of murders and the Chinatown pet store, and believes that Count D is the culprit. But as he tries to assemble a case against them, he finds himself drawn into D's world, and their relationship might be a little closer than just cop and suspect.
詳しい話は店に帰ってからにしませんか？そろそろお茶の時間ですし、チョコレートとカスタードクリームのたっぷり乗ったパイを ご馳走しますよ。
Where exactly does 1999's Pet Shop of Horrors fit into the world of anime? As a manga, Pet Shop of Horrors is kind of seen as a classic of female-focused horror, practically a staple of best manga you're not reading right now lists. And it still maintains a strong legacy in the States thanks to it being marketed heavily in the 2000s by its licensor Tokyopop, but don't hold that against it. As for the anime, it's a little harder to discern. It was brought over at the turn of the millennium by California-based licensor Urban Vision, but seemed to go out of print right before the manga hit big in the States. It was one of the first titles rescued from licensing hell by the then newly founded Sentai Filmworks in 2009, and has stayed available ever since. But by that point, it feels like it missed its chance. I knew that the manga existed for years, but it really wasn't until Daryl Surat did an anime turning 20 panel back in 2019 that I was even informed of an anime. What exactly did cause an anime adaptation of a popular horror manga to slip under the radar? Was it because it was bad? No, actually, far from it. It's actually really good, and when compared to the crop of other female-focused horror manga adaptations we've covered thus far,
Dark Cats Unite!
it actually might be the best and most faithful one. Why is that exactly? Well, wouldn't you like to know, my pets?
こちらです。
Now, when I said that Pet Shop of Horrors is an example of female-focused horror, notice that I didn't specify which female demographic. After our last episode, you would be forgiven to think that Pet Shop of Horrors is another example of shoujo horror, but not quite. Pet Shop actually falls into the mysterious realm that we know as Josei manga. Josei manga, or ladies comics, are defined as a manga marketed to adult women. It had its roots in the Gekiga movement, with shoujo artists like Miyaku Maki playing around with the idea of adult manga made specifically for women. This eventually led to magazines dedicated to women-focused Gekiga like Futabasha's Papillon in 1972. Unfortunately, they were not commercially successful and ended up folding after 1 or 2 years. For the remainder of the 70s, the idea of a manga catering to the adult female crowd lay dormant. But around that time was the emergence of the Year 24 group and the golden age of shoujo, where female authors introduced complicated and mature themes to the world of shoujo manga. By the early 80s, editors saw the reception more mature shoujo manga got compared to its more kid-friendly affair and decided that maybe it was time to branch out. It was a slow process at first. Shokami editor Junya Yamamoto arguably published the first Josei manga, Petite Flower, in 1980, but it was marketed more as a shoujo for the college crowd. But it did lead to other Josei periodicals being published, like Kodansha's B-Love, which focused on manga centered around housewives and women in the workforce. Josei Works even took advantage of the more adult content they were not allowed to show in their shoujo manga and had their own forms of hentai zines, most notably the bibliography of Milk Morizono, who has been known as the queen of ladies manga. But now we get to the 90s. The lost decades economy has caused the growth of the still developing Josei genre to stall out. Magazines are getting cancelled, and its reputation seems to be based entirely on what authors like Morizono were putting out. Enter Matsuri Akino. Born in Tokyo, date of birth unknown, she had been working in the manga industry since 1985, but it wasn't until 1990 that she had her first major hit, The Psychic Corporation, a supernatural Josei title about a substitute science teacher who actively works solving problems in the spirit world as a, spirit detective. But as she was wrapping that title up in the mid-90s, Akino began publishing a new manga for Soro Publishing's Apple Mystery Monthly. It was called Pet Shop of Horrors. Pet Shop of Horrors ran for 10 volumes between 1995 to 1998. Certainly a lot in a short period, but enough to make an impact. At first glance, Pet Shop of Horrors seems to be more of your shoujo horror and all the traits within. Atmospheric, sublimely beautiful in its horror, being centered around an androgynous, mysterious man of possible supernatural origin, etc. But what puts it into Josei is not just the far more brutal level of violence seen within the pages, but its maturity in addressing difficult themes. One story involves Dee relaying information to Leon about how a murdered customer bought a digital pet fish, and we soon learn that the digital pet became the vessel for the quote-unquote male customer's true female identity. And the big twist at the end is that we learn that she was murdered in a transphobic hate crime, and it is treated as the senseless tragedy that it is. Everything seems to point to Pet Shop of Horrors being a pretty big success. Not many failed mangas get 2 sequel manga titles, one of which went on for 8 years and 12 volumes. So right when the manga ended in 1998, an anime adaptation was on the table, right? It had to be. Well, in a ways, yes. Tokyo Broadcasting System were interested in commissioning an anime adaptation of Pet Shop to run on their primetime block of Wonderful. However, it wasn't going to be a full 26 episode order or even a 12 episode order. Rather, they opted instead to make it a 4 episode miniseries. And I think I have a good hypothesis as to why they chose that. These days, Josei is actually quite mainstream. Ever since the mid-aughts with the success of the Noitamina block, there's usually a handful of Josei titles getting greenlit each season. In the 90s though, Josei anime was non-existent. The term Josei as a concept had only recently been coined. And on top of that, Pet Shop was a supernatural horror in an era where the genre was mostly centered around slow-burning psychological horrors. With how much it had going against it, we should be lucky that TBS gave it that 4 episodes. I think this is also the reason why the budget for these 4 episodes is average TV quality. Nothing that warrants any unnecessary extravagance, barring the computer animation and the opening narration, which really puts me in the mood to plug in my PlayStation. But if I said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, good direction can always make up for budget. And luckily for Pet Shop, it's in the hands of Toshio Hirata, who we have learned from this show certainly knows his way around the shots. Pet Shop of Horrors is one of those horror franchises that's focused on the slow burn. It's a very atmospheric horror where the stories are less about presenting big scares, but more about surrounding you with an eeriness that envelops you like a thick fog. Hirata and the rest of the storyboarders understood the assignment, maintaining that gradual eeriness with a dash of noir mystery throughout the miniseries, but each episode having its storyboarder give their own unique flair to it. Episode 1, which was boarded by Hirata himself, leans way hard into the horror, using dark shadows and claustrophobic blocking to elevate the tension. Of course, this could also be the censorship of television. Episode 2, boarded by Hiroshi Hamasaki, feels kind of like a play, having a dramatic operatic quality to it while mostly playing out in a very minimalist location of an indoor swimming pool. Episode 3, boarded by Yoshiaki Kawajiri, is the one that utilizes a lot of his neo-noir stylism to create a tragic narrative by making all the environments feel lonely and spaced out. And finally, episode 4, boarded by Satoshi Nishimura, achieves a duality of gritty realism mixed with lavish pictorial composition. But even with each storyboarder bringing their own vision to each episode, they are all united in bringing the feel of Akino's story to life. For one thing, the character designs of Hisashi Abe translated Akino's characters into almost statuesque beauties in some cases, especially Count D, who, even in the limitations of budget, looks just as entrancing as his look in the manga.
一度味を占めたら忘れられない。それが愛という肉の味なんです。
The designs of the pets are also visual treats, and with an extra emphasis on how human they look, it does make this horror hornier than you would think.
それに一番違うのは、僕がいなければ生きていけないということだ。僕が守ってあげないと生きていけない。だからメドゥーサ、君も僕だけのために生きておくれ。
I did mention that the anime had that noir element to it, and I stand by that. Thanks to the art direction of Hiroshi Kato and Tatsuya Kushida, the city of San Francisco feels desolate even among the crowds, filled with dirty city streets, colorful yet austere suburbs, and bland fluorescent lit office buildings. So when you step into Count D's pet shop, it's as if you were transported to another world with its maximalist exotica. Really makes you hope he got out before the tech bros gentrified everything. The noir feel is also heard in the soundtrack courtesy of guitarist and composer Kazuhisa Yamaguchi. The sound of Pet Shop of Horrors is smooth free jazz mixed with late 90s trip-hop beats. Lots of smoky saxes, breathy ethereal female vocals, and slow tempo percussion. It feels reminiscent of Massive Attack or early 90s Sade. It elevates the atmosphere of Pet Shop where you can feel the mysterious nature of the narrative around every dark city corner. But when things do need to get tense, Yamaguchi slowly builds into a cacophonic noise to match the growing dread of the audience. I think the noir nature of Pet Shop is necessary for the overarching wraparounds involving Count D and Leon, because the structure of these stories are almost like mysteries. What exactly are these mysterious pets that look like humans to people? What are the terms of Count D's contract that he gives to the new owners? How exactly will those terms play out into an eventual downfall? This is where Leon comes in. Because he is the first to trace the mysterious goings-on to Count D's pet shop, he's always the first to suspect him. Though, of course, his conclusion is that Count D is involved in narcotics and human trafficking is flat out wrong.
最近この店で妙なペットを売りつけられた客が変死する事件が相次いでいる。噂じゃペットショップはカムフラージュで、裏では人身売買、麻薬の取引、はたまた中国マフィアのテロリストの一味か。
But Count D, despite his not-so-hidden misanthropic streak, hey, he prefers the company of animals, what can you say, is very accommodating to Leon, treating him with respect and giving him the information he wants, to the point that he can also serve as the narrator for a story as we learn the details along with Leon.
私が思うに、ロビンは亡霊に取り殺されたのですよ。
亡霊?
But Count D only gives out the information that he himself is privy to. He's many things, but he's not omniscient. And usually, Leon ends up having to do some actual detective work to figure out that parts of the story out. Count D himself is also a figure shrouded in mystery. While he may be willing to talk about his business, he seems to be very coy about his actual origins. All we know about him is that the pet shop is actually owned by his grandfather, and Count D is just minding the store while he's away. But the little breadcrumbs we do get raises more questions. He seems to know a lot about the legal system, as the contracts he has people sign are legally binding documents that removes them from any liability in case something bad happens. And the pet shop he runs is not a front for anything. It's a legitimate business that sells normal animals to keep the lights on, something that helps Count D make connections in high places.
やあお待たせカウント D。
やあペギーちゃんお久しぶり。
市長？
なんだね君、勝手に入り込んだりして。
But the final episode also feeds some information that whoever owns the pet shop clearly has been at it for a while. And the question is, was it Count D's grandfather or Count D himself? Although, let's be real here, that's not what some of you are here for. You're here to see the tete-a-tete between the mystifyingly elegant shopkeeper and his blonde pretty boy prey blossom into sexual tension as he lures him further and further into his web. And you Fujoshis will be pleased to know that it does not disappoint in that area.
いつもお茶の時間になるといらっしゃる。
そっちがいつも茶ばかりしてるんだろうが。
For all his bluster playing Zenigata to his Lupin III, Leon nevertheless seems to have a fascination with Count D. Most of this can be attributed to him just wanting to solve a case, but he does oblige Count D at his many tea parties a lot, even if he has no commitments. If anything, he knows how to play ball with the Count and give him what he desires most.
この香りはホテル・ド・マルセイユのシャンパーニュすごい。これは1日限定30個、開店前に並ばないと手に入らない一品ですよ。あなたっていい人だったんですね。
Anything else I'm neglecting to mention? Oh right, the scary stories in this horror anime. Each story is based off of a story in the original manga. Episode 1, Daughter, tells the story of a grieving couple who buy a rabbit that looks exactly like their recently deceased daughter. Episode 2, Delicious, tells the story of a popular pop singer's death and her newly widowed husband's growing obsession with a mermaid that looks exactly like her. Episode 3, Despair, tells the story of a recently divorced actor who has hit the skids and buys a pet reptile to cheer himself up. Said pet ends up being a lamia who can kill people with a gaze. And episode 4, Duel, tells the story of a young congressman with presidential ambitions and his assistant who is willing to do anything to make that happen, including buying a Kirin, a creature who grants the wish of its sovereign through the blood of others. The structure of these stories are relatively the same. Indeed, a common critique I've seen of Pet Shop of Horrors is that its stories stick to a pretty rigid formula. Someone has a need, they go to Count D's pet shop to ask for a pet to address that need. Count D gives them a creature of supernatural origins along with a list of do's and do not do's when taking care of them, and inevitably there's a twist at the end that ends up very badly for the owners. Frankly, you could say the same thing about the average Twilight Zone episode. Knowing whether or not there's a twist in the end isn't what makes a quality episode. It's the writing, stupid!
That's not fair.
What makes Pet Shop such a classic in the realm of horror manga is the quality of Akino's writing, and Madhouse channels it onto the screen. She knows how to set things up with enough information to draw you in and slowly unfurl the mystery as you try to keep guessing what's going to happen next. This is executed at best with Count D's contracts, as they explain the rules the owner needs to follow to keep their pet happy. There are almost always 3 rules, and you know one of those rules might get broken to set up the horror later on. There's also the one constant rule that the pet must not ever be seen by anyone except the owners, which ends up planting the seed for a real mystery that never gets answered. Just how human are these pets? How Akino writes dialogue is also an amazing tapestry of speech, and it's made even more hauntingly beautiful coming out of the mouth of Count D's voice actor, Toshihiko Seiki. Listen as he makes a beautiful poem out of a solemn soliloquy about how power, even with good intentions, has a price paid in blood.
そして世界大戦の終結を願ったある国の大統領はこの世を地獄に変える新型爆弾のスイッチを押した。人間がキリンを捕らえるのではなく、キリンが王を選ぶのだ。
And you can't say it's formulaic if you look at the episodes purely from a structural standpoint, but they actually do take several different forms. And for this segment of the video, I will be spoiling the first segment, Daughter, so I hope none of you mind if I do that. So upon the couple being given the rabbit that looks exactly like their deceased daughter, one of Count D's stipulations is that they can only feed her lettuce and other staples of a rabbit's diet, and not anything else. Yeah, the Mr. Wing comparisons do not stop at the pet shop. At first, the couple obeys the rule to the letter, but once Alice, named after their deceased daughter, decides that she wants cookies instead, the mother decides that maybe one won't hurt.
You'll be sorry!
To cut a long story short, Alice turns into a ravenous beast that gives birth to a whole litter of flesh-eating rabbits that crawl out of her womb alien style and quickly multiply. Surveying the damage, Count D gives the mother a dressing down for her parental abilities, or lack thereof. It's a morality play.
望むものはすべて与え、いたずらしても叱ることもなくわがまま放題。家庭からも社会からも脱落し、犯罪を重ね他人を傷つけ、挙句の果てには自らも麻薬に蝕まれ。
The mother chose to give her daughter everything she wanted, including the drugs that killed her. And once she's given another shot to not make the same mistake again, she inevitably does, and it costs her everything. And the other episodes have different forms as well. Delicious is a murder mystery. Despair is a tragic romance. Duel is a philosophical drama about what people are willing to sacrifice to get what they want. They're different stories, and yet they all envelop you in Pet Shop's brand of horror. The kind where the full weight of it only crashes down on you at the very end, smothering you like a weighted blanket. Stories where you can't help but shudder in fear of the implications. If this actually had gone to a full series, Pet Shop of Horrors could have easily been the Twilight Zone of the anime world. But I guess the 4 we ended up getting will have to do in the end. Overall, Pet Shop of Horrors is effective Halloween viewing. It's not the kind that will make you shriek in terror, but it is the kind that will worm your way into your heart after you watch a feel-bad supernatural story. Think less House and more The Vanishing, and that's the kind of scares you're in for. Plus, it's got some all-time classic Fujoshi bait we can all enjoy. A nice spice for the people who prefer their All Hallows month to be more yaoi than normal. So whether it's uneasy horror or just sexual tension between 2 femme men you're looking for this season, then Pet Shop of Horrors might just be right up your alley. This concludes another Halloween season at KYOTO Video. Be safe out there, and remember, take care of your pets, always.